archaeologists from Senegal and Mozambique to stand up and introduce themselves in the mic and tell us where they are from and what they study. Just a quick introduction for yourselves, please.
Good evening. My name is Mohamed Osman. I come from Mozambique. I'm working with the Tourist Association in Ireland. I come from the community from Thailand. And now I am member of participate in the slave break project. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Anta from Mozambique. I'm an archaeologist and I have collaborated with Libre projects and Eduardo Mondlane University. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ibrahima. I'm from Senegal. I'm using for my poor English speaking. I am working actually in Iran with Thiaw Ibrahima, and I am doing my thesis in the archaeological land, and I am happy to be here with you. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ibrahima. I'm a professor of archaeology at the University Cheikh, Anta Diop of Dakar, and I've been involved in studying slavery and the slave trade over the past 20 years. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Celso Simbine. I'm from Mozambique, and I'm teacher assistant of Eduardo University, and I'm also involved in the research of slave wreck projects. Thank you.
Thank you all. We have a busy agenda tonight. First, I would like to invite Jessica Keller, Dave Conlon, David Morgan to come up here and just give a brief update on the Park Service's current status on field work, what we've been doing out at Buck Island, and here with our excavations at the fort, and really quickly what our plans are over the next year or so. So, rock, paper, scissors, who goes first? So.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. As part of the underwater portion, unfortunately, I do not have the beautiful underwater pictures that we had last year and the year before, as some of you may remember. But we are out jumping anomalies and doing some very good work, and we hope once we jump the rest of the anomalies that we have coming up, that we will have some beautiful pictures and a map that we are working on with our guests to show you for next year. So thank you.
There's another Dr. Dave in this room. We had to explain to our guests from Africa that not all archaeologists who work for the National Park Service are named Dave. But as it so happens, we have David Morgan, David Conlon, and Dr. Gadsby, if you could please stand up and introduce yourself. I just want to kind of point out that this work and these wonderful people and new friends that we have here from Africa are but the most visible sign of a huge project and years of work and effort by many, many people to make sure that everyone arrives here at the same time and working. And so, these things don't happen by accident, and to get people traveling from Mozambique Island or from Senegal with the State Department assistance and diplomatic passports and visas and stuff, it's a tremendous amount of work. And so there's been a whole bunch of people here at the park, and also with the Park Service and with the Smithsonian and with George Washington and other partners. And so please introduce yourselves to our new friends, ask them about what they're doing, talk to them after the presentation, because a whole lot of people put a whole lot of effort to get them here. So please take advantage of it and make them welcome as as Crucians can. So with that.
Good evening, everyone. I'm really delighted to be here, and not least of which is to find out about this array project, because I really want to know from Clayton what it is that CAL could do. I didn't think they did much of anything, so
they move around way more than you would ever expect.
Okay, so I'm learning all the time, and this for me has been an amazing opportunity to really come in as a visitor and begin to learn about the history of St. Croix and to learn it from the Crucian people. And we're sort of facilitators in that extent. So for me, this is a very meaningful project because it lets me connect what it is that I do, which is archaeology and archaeology of the experience of enslavement, to the contemporary world. And this is a project that is really not about esoteric quantities of brick fragments or anything else. This project is really, in the United States, about things like Black Lives Matter. This is very important to me personally, and I think to the National Park Service and the Smithsonian and all of our other international partners, because for us it's an opportunity to bring back into memory a very difficult part of our heritage, but one that we have to be aware of if we're to understand why it is that our modern world is shaped the way it is, because everything in the modern world is really built on the backs of the people who made it, say, willingly or unwillingly. And so this is an amazingly important project that you are seeing sort of the tip of the iceberg on. We're trying to be relatively short tonight because we think that you probably want to hear from our guests more so than from us. But the quick version is that this is our third return as superintendent to Mindset. The first time we came and we heard from everyone what it was that was important to the Crucian community about a project like this. We want to tell our story. Where are our youth? Why is it that we're not telling the story and are more engaged? Where's the opportunity for us, for resources, for employment, to be able to tell the story? So coming back the second year, we try to work with our partners locally to make a lot of that happen. So internships, increased partnerships with UVI, new course curriculum coming out, trying to teach the youth who will be standing here in our places in developing this story and relating it to the rest of the world. So we've made some good progress that way. And then in terms of what the Park Service is interested in, we've also reached a few milestones. So I believe that, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, but I believe that Buck Island is now the underwater property in the possession of the National Park Service, certainly in the Southeast, that has received the most intensive scrutiny of any underwater property that we hold. So we have a better idea here at Buck Island of what the underwater resources are that are in our care than we do in almost any other park unit. So that helps us make some really informed management decisions to save these places for ourselves and for future generations along the way. So that's really important. We've found hundreds of magnetic anomalies, a lot of which sometimes turn out to be shopping carts and radios, and if you're missing something off your boat, we may be able to help you find it somewhere along the way, but others are historic shipwrecks. So we're talking about things that really connect us to the heritage. So what we've been doing last summer and this summer is sort of tackling documentation at two levels, out on the water and here on the land. And Meredith, would you like to tell a little bit more about what people have probably seen driving back and forth? That's your bailiwick.
Very quickly. So last summer, we ran some limited archaeological excavations out here in front of the fort. I'm sure all y'all drove by us when we were out there for almost six weeks. We used local University of Virgin Islands interns, as well as interns from Denmark, and another intern who joined us from California, but she was originally from San Antonio, Texas. And so it was a real international effort. Some of whom had archaeological experience, most of whom did not. So we were learning from ground zero and working our way up and teaching these kinds of techniques. We know that the interns who we work with in the future from the University of Virgin Islands, most of whom will never become archaeologists, but at least now they have the awareness of what the resources, of the history, of what's involved in it, and then they can go back and tell their families and their friends what it is, not just that we do, but the kinds of resources that are here in the park and all over St. Croix itself. So we'll be back this summer, hopefully, God willing, if we ever get a budget, to do additional excavations with more local student interns. I believe we might be getting a couple more from Denmark. It seems like we're getting a very good partnership with universities over there. And we're not stopping. We're not going anywhere. We're going to be helping uncover this history and teaching as many people, bringing in as many people as we can to help tell these stories. So that's the very quick and dirty version of what we're doing. I'd like to introduce next Dr. David Gadsby. He's just going to spend a couple of minutes, very short, about what this program is, how we brought in our colleagues from Senegal and Mozambique, and our working relationship with State Department, and how all of this actually happened before we hand the mic over.
And then afterwards, I'm sorry, I was just going to say, and then afterwards, we're happy to stick around, and if you have questions specifically about what's going on out on the ground or out on the water, we'd be happy to talk a little bit about it.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to say a couple of words about, really about the program that brought our visitors here, and it is sort of a companion program to the Slave Rex project that we call the Protecting Slave-Related Sites and Antiquities Project. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it hits all the bases that we needed to hit. That the money that brought our visitors here is part of a State Department cooperative agreement that we have with the United States State Department Cultural Heritage Center. They asked us what kinds of international programs around cultural heritage they thought we could work with them on, and we said, Slave Rex Project is a natural fit. This is something that we're already doing. We're already doing it well. We can bring an international component in here. We can really have some good interactions. And so State Department was very interested in that. Their focus is on protecting cultural heritage, and that means very specifically in government that the law enforcement part of protecting sites. We were able to convince them that they wanted to expand beyond just the idea of law enforcement to also include site stewardship, community engagement, site management. And so we've brought our guests here for 11 days or so, 10 days or so, to work on documenting terrestrial sites, documenting submerged sites. We had a community engagement workshop this morning that was very interesting, and tomorrow we're going to have a day-long law enforcement workshop for our visitors and for other interested folks from around the island. And so it's really been a great workshop so far, and I'm glad that you all were able to come and share. We could share some of our information with you. The real speakers are not me, and so I think I'd like to introduce Dr. Ibrahima Thiaw. He's a professor of anthropology at University of Dakar. The name is longer, but I can't say it. And he's going to be our first speaker, and then Celso will be second.
Good evening, everyone. It's a big pleasure to be here for the very first time in St. Croix. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of this meeting, in particular the National Park Service, and specifically the three devs. Of course, Mary Dad and all the others. It's a huge pleasure to discover this beautiful landscape. But as we all know, it's appeared that these are landscapes that are also loaded. And I'm not going to be talking about St. Croix, but discussing my experience in Senegal, researching slavery and the slave trade over the past 20 years. either we know it or not, slavery and colonization shaped our modernity and has created a constellation of political, commercial exchanges, social relations, and material engagement through which race, status, and identity were constantly negotiated within the context of a globalized political economy. And we all know also that they're associated with issues of deep moral and political significance, such as racism, and also the economic disparities associated with slavery and colonization continue to structure our modernity today. In addition to that, we have new political landscape that have been crafted out of the Atlantic encounter, and all of this is we still negotiate in the present. So either we see it or not, our relations are to some extent largely structured by the Atlantic encounter, in which slavery and the slave trade played a significant role. So just very quickly to give you an idea of the area I'll be talking mainly, Senegambia, which is this area here, as you can see, in Western Africa, which is of course near some major political formations. This is the polity of Ghana, that was extremely important in the trans-Saharan trade as well. So Senegambia was exposed 1,000 years ago to international exchange, and in which slavery was also very important. And via that connection, of course, they accumulated some sort of experience in dealing with external group. So an important thing to remember in the way that would help Senegambian probably to some extent deal with the European when they arrived on the West African coast in the 15th century. One of the first consequences of the Atlantic slave trade was that the space, the political space of Senegambia became fragmented as early as the 16th, 17th century as a result of growing contact with the Europeans. Just to give you a few challenges that the Atlantic system posed, for instance, with Islam that was already there, but also certain social organization. With the arrival of the Europeans, we have the local belief system that was challenged severely. And as you can see here, not always visible, these are local shrines that are very discreet, that you can pass without sometime notice if you do not, or you may not know what it means. And on the back you have a mosque. So you have all these things on the landscape that these things that were challenged, and also European brought new religions, and we have all these different systems coming across each other and clashing over each other. We have also the emergence of colonial towns with forts, for instance, that they installed. This is the one very famous site known as Goree Island in Senegal, where by the 15th century the European created their own settlement, building with hard material versus soft material that completely disappeared. So what we see in these colonial towns basically is the most visible aspect of it is the European presence and might. But underneath, when you look carefully, of course, we had slave labor that was involved, and we have African who contribute into shaping this landscape, although we call it colonial architecture or European towns. So part of the research agenda that we tried to develop very early on was to deconstruct, discuss, and educate. I think this is this was at the heart of the programs I developed over the past 20 years. And in part, also one of my biggest challenges was to really tackle the issue locally, and particularly the contradiction within African societies. In Senegambia, in large parts of West Africa, slavery is still a status that is ascribed at birth. So you're born as a slave descendant, you're a slave, and that's how it works. And unfortunately, despite all the debates, that issue is still very much something that is very much going on. Economic dependence also is there between former slave owners and descendants. We also have, both locally and between Africa and the rest of the world, or say the Gambia and Europe or the Americas, we have, of course, a number of social injustice, ethnic problems sometimes, and stereotypes that are involved in this as a legacy of the Atlantic slave trade. So I wanted, as an archaeologist, to tackle these issues looking at empirical data, material culture, because there is a lot of talk, and usually when dealing with this issue, people talk with their heart, and sometimes there is very little evidence that support what they do. So I wanted some material evidence that I could touch, that I could feel, that I could test, to really support some of the things I was saying. So I initiated this program in Goree Island, excavating a number of sites to uncover really material culture, landscapes, and activities that were related to the Atlantic slave trade. And looking at data related to bio-anthropological data to look at the populations who were involved, who live on the island. Another area that I work outside of Goree was southeastern Senegal, rugged landscape, very difficult area that have been very poorly studied, and this is 450 kilometers off the coast inland. Usually we tend to think that, okay, Europeans arrive by the coast, and it is along the coast where you have these forts that you'll find evidence. No, actually, people who never seen European have even been profoundly affected by Atlantic slave trade. And this landscape of southeastern Senegal are home to small-scale population who used it as refuge site, fleeing, of course, pressure, not only from the European, but from local elites who were involved in slave trading and pillaging. And so a number of things that have shaped me. In 2011, while doing research in this area of southeastern Senegal, I came across this flyer on one of the villages that was on top of a hill. And it says, Le Sénégal est aussi notre pays. Senegal is our country too. And that was very shocking to me. I realized there must be something we're doing wrong. And I have to confess that it is at around this time that I really started to worry a lot about community, that issues and questions that from the community matter to any research program dealing with this. And in another experience, it became even more powerful. When I was a kid, the griot, when telling family history, referred always to this site that I thought was mythical. I even didn't think it existed, but it was related to family history. I won't tell you the whole history, but during a survey in an area in western Senegal, I arrived at this site that was probably associated to my own family history. And it was shocking, and I was with Adama, my doctoral student, who took these pictures. I called my sister right away, and I said, you won't believe this. Well, I am at this, and she said, that's not possible. What can I bring? He said, well, bring a sample of sand, at least from that, if there's nothing else to bring. So here am I collecting a bit of sand to take, just so that they know I've been there. So, and then this piece of wood, in the narrative, these were the basis used for granaries, and there was a lot of labor, intensive labor, maybe by slaves. that we had on the narratives, and I went to the village and I started to ask questions about this, and I was able to find that there was at least one of these pieces that was there, that was still there in the village, that I took to the museum, and that's where it is now. But it's a long story. I just skip to going back to southeastern Senegal. These landscapes are very difficult. The population living on in this area have to go down to fetch water and take it up to 300-400 meters up. They also have to go down for farmlands. It's a very difficult situation usually for them. And this landscape were direct product of the Atlantic slave trade. And here is a team of student surveying with me. And over the past 10 years, we've been deeply involved in this area, recording sites in sites that are very difficult of access. And other things that are important, these are local strongholds, as you can see on the outline, and there are remnants of a wall here. As Europeans were building their forts, the local elites also started to build these strongholds that are locally known as Tata. So that were both of course, places maybe for defense, but also places from where slaves may have been kept, particularly in the 17th and 18th centuries. But one of the most important aspects of my work, I thought, was that I had to begin recording sites that were much more smaller, less monumentary sites. Because if I was looking just at the forts and at the stronghold, I would miss the picture. So I wanted to work on sites that was inhabited by or occupied by layered persons, by ordinary people, perhaps by slave or peasant, people without power. So I started to record these also, very ordinary, rudimentary stone features. And like this one also on the top of a hill that we excavated. And we carried a number of excavations of this, and it was a unique opportunity to compare, of course, with modern household features. And looking at all this data and comparing with what is happening along the coast, we really need to understand when dealing with slavery that at the heart of this whole thing, identity is extremely important, and it is something that every society, every culture does value. And when looking at the guest book warehouse in Goree Island, what occurred to me is that the diaspora coming from the Americas, usually the entries are very different from the entries by resident Africans. And in the entries by the diaspora people, the sense of belonging and identity and even recovering a lost soul, a broken umbilical cord on the shore of the Atlantic. These were the messages, extremely powerful messages. While on the African side, usually there was an attachment to economics, for instance, the impoverishment of African, how African is one of the continents that is certainly one of the most impoverished, economically speaking, for a lot of disease and war and all of that. So these were the issues that many Africans thought were a direct outcome of European colonization and Atlantic colonization and Atlantic slavery. So Goree Island have become a symbol, a place where many people actually go to pilgrimage, to some to mourn, some for some other reasons, but because there are other stakeholders coming. This is a very difficult past that need to be dealt with, but in any situation, what is sure is that, what we know is that identity, people want to be there to reclaim a certain identity that may have been lost during the Atlantic time period. So we learned that from the views that we record we collected from the guest book entries, that every generation, every nation tend to reinvent its past, and but in many cases also there is some sort of silences. And when we look at the history of Senegambia, of course our heroes have changed for the past, and we always constantly try to reimagine ourselves and reimagine our heroes. This is a very new monument known as Monument de la Renaissance Africaine, African Renaissance Monument. This is the slave trade. So, and these are a number of national heroes, and you have even General de Gaulle, who was a French colonizer, I guess, but who at some point had been a hero in Saint-Louis de Senegal up north. Feder, who founded the colony of Senegal, is seen as a national hero as well. A healthy society cannot be oblivious of its past, no matter how difficult it may be. So the past is important and continue to structure our present. And ultimately, it is not just, all this end of it is not just to recover a lost past. I think it is much more than that. I think that it is a project, it should be a project about the future. And we should, in our endeavor to this, tackle contemporary legacies of slavery, including, of course, human trafficking, that is still an issue around the world, forced labor, and also basic problems like problems of citizenship, nationhood, social justice in the present. And so to be able to do that, I always felt that education was the key, and it is via education that we will be able to prevent future human rights abuses, for instance. And but also an important aspect of all of this is capacity building. 3 years ago, I was just a terrestrial archaeology. I may have accumulated quite a bit of experience in that. But 3 years ago, I met with folks from the Slave Wreck Project, and I began learning how to dive. And this is why I'm here. Actually, I am here really as a student, and it is fantastic. I'm discovering it, and I want to use this for another step forward in documenting Atlantic slavery. And I think that this is going to bring new data, new opportunities, but whatever the efforts, whatever the end result, what is clear in any efforts that will be involving, community going to be at the center of everything. So to conclude briefly is that all these efforts is really to unpack the legacies of slavery and tackles problems that continue to plague our present world. And in that endeavor, of course, we should tackle issues of political and social marginalization, as well as poverty. These issues are important because this is the root of some of the problems that we're facing, either we want it or not. And also we need to be more inclusive in Africa as well as in the Americas. I think that the stakeholders are many, and slavery is not only a black and white issue. I think we need to look at its complexities to be able to better deal with it. And again, education is extremely important, and it's about our future. And the choice we make about what we want to preserve or what we want to change are about what kind of society we want to build in the future. And our goal should be to contribute to improve the quotidian life of ordinary and all individuals in society. And it should be a future where that can bring more hope to the ordinary people. So to conclude, we should, in our endeavor, do our best to not harm anyone. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you and good evening once again. Yeah, I will be here presenting the preliminary results of the slave work project in Mozambique. But first of all, let me thank the organizer of this meeting and to say that our team from Mozambique was well received, and thank you by that. And also thank particularly to David Collin who sent us the invitation to be here. And as you know, the work from we're undertaking there in Mozambique, in Mozambique, we're undertaking this work is being undertaken by Eduardo University, but in partnership or in the collaboration all with this all the association or the organization, the National Park Service, George Washington University, and others. And one of the aim we have now in this research is to find a biggest ship, the famous one called L'Aurore. This was one of the biggest ship was devoted to transport slaves from Africa and to sell them in overseas. We are looking for this shipwreck for many times. The first research of these shipwrecks was started in archives. So to locate the documents, the written records, which can give us information of where might it be sunk. And one of the results we met is that the documents found by Yolanda Eduardo, who was in charge to be recording, to be collecting the documents of L'Aurore, she found these documents, and we were lucky because this ship was sunk in front of Mozambique Island, the place where slave right projects has been working in partnership and collaboration with the Eduardo University. And as you can see by this map, we have been surveying all this area. Probably this ship, L'Aurore, might be at this site here, because from the document we have been reading from information about this ship, it says that in 17 February, the ship was still in the port of Mozambique Island loading slaves, preparing the crew so that in the following day it could leave. And they loaded 600 slaves. And during the process of loading these 600 slaves, some of them started a revolt. But unfortunately, their revolt didn't have a successful. They were stopped and they were controlled by the crew. And in the following day, 18th of February, when the ship was leaving the island, started strong. And while this ship was leaving, one started the storm. One of the anchor, the crowd tried to launch the anchor so that they could anchor the ship again, but unfortunately it didn't happen because the first anchor they launched it broke, and the ship started to drifting over the coral stones in front of Cabecera Pequena. And when the crowd could see that this shipping is drifting away on the direction of the reef, they launched the second anchor. But unfortunately, this second anchor also broke, and the ship stayed without any anchor. And unfortunately, it came to the reef and it crashed over here and sank with those slaves. And probably we don't know exactly where it is. We just try to sketch the area. This is the area 4 and this is the area 3. And this other area we sketched here. We sketched this area being helped by local communities. One of the efforts of slavery project at the Mondlane University is to include the community in all the research we undertake in the Mozambique Island. And according to the interviews with one of the local community, fisherman, he says that in this area, when he's been fishing or snorkeling, he used to see barrack stones and something that are related to the shipwrecks. And therefore, we went with him And in the west side, in the east side of Mozambique Island, we made some dives and snorkel. We fortunately identified shipwrecks there. We found a scattered material, and probably might be La Aurora, we don't know yet. But so far we just survived this area, the area 4 and the area 3. And one of the results of our survival, as we've been surviving here, we went the mark at this area. We identified so many anomalies. We identified anomalies. And in all these anomalies, when we went to dive, we could not see almost nothing. Maybe probably all the stuff exists there underneath the sand and sargasso. But in one side, we found an anchor. But we don't know, we don't have information yet about this anchor. We are still in process to research it. And the anchor I'm talking about is this one. No? It's about 3 meters of height. And the site we visited, the one I say EDM 018, this site, here we went here to dive here with the help of local fishermen who said that he sees balustrons. He used to see balustrons, and probably might be the shipwreck we are looking for. It doesn't know, but he introduced us this place, and we went to dive and we saw these are balustrons, and no evidence about these balustrons, but probably it might be. So we are planning that in the next field work we could try to document this site or open a test pit so that we can see what is underneath these balustrons and these sediments. So beyond the underwater survival, underwater field work we undertake, we also been working in the land. And this is another work where I've been doing then Mozambique Island with the University Eduardo and Slave Rock Project, looking for a tunnel of slaves. The local community of Mozambique Island believes that there exists a tunnel which we use it to transport slaves when we brought from the mainland, and we introduce it to the island so that later they could be loaded in the ship and could be transported overseas. And Roland also succeeded to find out a map and draws which shows probably this building. And we went to see this building a day. We decided to take a day and survive this area. And what we found that this is actually a madrasa in the Mozambique Island. But in the document comes that this place were a warehouse. But they don't clarify what kind of stuff they used to store in that place. So when we made a survey, we could see that from the foundation of this side, in the left side and in the right side, this building presents the similar characteristics. In different sides are the similar. But here in the middle, seems like it was closed. It was a door before. And therefore, we decided to get inside of the courtyard, and if it was probably a door, as you can see here, this door is this one. This is the site plan. Here, we have the same characteristics, and here seems like it was closed. And if it's a really tunnel which comes like this, the only way we could use to find this tunnel was to put here a trench in the perpendicular forms, like a cutting a section. And when we try to implement this method, it seems like that it worked because during the excavation, because during the excavation, in the left side of that trench I displayed, we found a wall. And this wall was made by coral stones and mortar. The rudimental material used it to build houses in Mozambique Island. It's about 14th centuries and 13th centuries. And I tried here to draw, but unfortunately, this is so like but I tried to draw the stones of that building. And during the excavation, something interesting that I found the local material, local pottery. This pottery here from 1 to 4, it dates probably 13 to 14 centuries before the presence of Portuguese and European in Mozambique Island. It shows that that island, before the presence of Europeans, the island were occupied by local community. And this one, ceramics from Sankul. Sankul is a site near the island, in the mainland. It means that the island, before it established contacts between the mainland and community from the island. We also find imported material like Chinese ceramics, porcelains, and some European stuff. And this is a work which has been undertaken carried out by a classmate of mine, Cesar Maman, who has been working directly in underwater sites. This work also has been carried out by Eduardo University and the Slave Work Project also. He has been now documenting a site which we qualified IDM 002. It's a ruin which is dated to 16th century. This ruin, unfortunately, was a victim of salvage activities, and there were a company which was working there and removed so many samples of porcelains, so they sold it. And they uncovered all the sediments of it. They left these timbers like this, uncovered and deteriorating. But we still have so many things to be researching there. And now Cesar Maman is in charge to be documented what this company left. And the method he used to document this site, he used a collection and inventory of analysis. They left so the photos and some data. They also developed a cataloging, and he is analyzing this process so that he can know what they did wrong or what they did right. So that we are now trying to remapping it, to redocument it, because they were interested in just removing the porcelains and things that they could get money selling it. They didn't use any scientific method, but now we're in charge to try to see what we can do by that scattered stuff. And these are the timbers. Some of timber they left uncovered, and this timber are in process to be deteriorating. So now we're working to try his way out so that we can preserve it to not deteriorate. And another shipwreck he's been working on is IDM 003 in the Mozambique Island. It's near to IDM 002 I presented previously. And he has been also working on preservation of this shipwreck, because also was a victim of salvage activities. Here they left timbers uncovered. They excavated this site and they removed ingots of copper. And they took those coppers also, they sold it. And now, when they remove the sediments, they excavate and remove the sediment, they leave those shipwrecks uncovered. The timber outside, and some timbers are removed from the site by the waves and things like that. And now we have been trying to document this site also using direct measurement and using also photomosaic survey, taking a picture and collecting these pictures, and we do it twice by year so that we can see the process, what happened according to the time. As here you can see the team setting up baselines also setting up the mark so that we can take photos and try to make a photo mosaic. And this is one of the results of our photo mosaic. We take photos and we make this model. We have here the marks, and since we have the model done, we try to draw what we can see. These are ballast stones, and these yellow figures are concretion. And these, the brown pieces, are wounded exposed. So it means that sometimes the site is covered and sometimes it's covered. But before they excavated it, it was covered by 3 meters of sediments. But in less 1 year, they removed all these 3 meters of sediments and they removed things. And after removing the structure which stayed there, they didn't deliver back the sediments and they left it open. And it's also in the process to be deteriorating. And this is the result of the mapping we've been doing in 2 seasons, and 2 seasons of research. The first time we recorded this area, the first section and the second. And then the second time we recorded the first section. On all this you can see here timber exposed. And these are the canons of the site, and this another side are ballast stones on the side. We didn't open now, we're just recording what exists at that side. We're just monitoring. Each time we go, we see what are happening to the site, what's happening to the site. And we have been also working on building capacity with the community. We have been training the community in open water courses so that they can help us to monitor this site when we are absent. Because we as archaeologists, we just go to the field work for a short time. And when we finish our field work, we go back home or to the office, and we will stay and will help us to watch what is going on with the site. Where there is no another one better instead of the community. So that to capacitate this community to be able to dive and see the sites, what's going on with site, we have to train them. This is an example. We have here the community, this picture here, one of these men here, this one is Diop, another Diop, and a man, local community from the island. We've been working with them in all we're doing. We've been training them in the direct measurement to survive with us. We teach them the techniques and how to manage the softwares. We're training them on conservations of the archaeological remains, and we're developing them. We're developing us together with them the plan to for conservation of underwater sites, and we join them also in the elaborations of the reports, things like that, so that they can know all the steps how any project of archaeology must go. And instead of working the coast, we have also slave records, also a classmate of mine who is working in the interior. So why do we have someone a person working in the interior and one working and people working the coast, so that in the end we can try to see the relationship between the slaves we brought in the interior and the slavery in the coast, to see if it exists a similar, because we are sure in something. The Mozambique Island is a small island which is kept 3 kilometers length and 500 meters width. And the slaves were shipped. Doesn't come from the island, but comes from the interior. And my classmate Shafi, he works in Niassa, where probably men of slaves came from there and were transported over the island. So we're trying also to draw the slave route, having someone researching in the interior and having people researching in the coast. This is it. And he has been also working with local community recording the oral information they gives from the elder people, what they says, and where probably the slaves were stored, and they took him to a place and where he could see structure of old houses made by local material. And they found also some pottery, and they said that it belongs to Mataka Kingdom. This Mataka Kingdom was Mataka was a ruler, a local ruler who was involved in slave trade. He used to take his men, their soldiers, his soldiers, and go to another groups, African groups, and they hunt the men, and they take those men they hunt in other groups and sell to Europeans as slaves. And they take their wives and marry with them, make their wives. Things like this. And the documentation we have been found, or Yolanda have been found, gives us probably how the idea was it made. And I say thank you, this is my team. Thank you.